Hey everybody, Josh Bentley, developer advocate, and I'm one of those special guest hosts that Ian Thane mentioned is going to start hosting our SAP Code Talk series. So if you're listening to me right now, or if you're watching us on YouTube, thank you very much. For this episode, I've got a friend that I love talking to about all things AI and LLMs. It's Frank Densborn. So Frank, welcome, and could you tell us what you work on?
Sure. Thank you, Josh. My name is Frank Densborn. I'm with the SAP App House, and we are an innovation team that actually works with customers directly to help them innovating on SAP BTP. And as you can imagine, ever since ChatGPT came out, generative AI is the big topic. And we found ourselves, like I would say, mid last year, really doing a lot of Gen AI projects with customers.
Yeah, definitely. And I remember last time we saw each other in person was down in New Orleans, part of the SAP Tech Connect conference with ASUG, and that was really fun. And then at the last minute, I got lucky enough to be asked to help you. And a room full of people that were working with, at the time, I think you kind of bubble gum and duct tape together some stuff, and we had them doing some real coding with these large language models. And the whole process of that was fascinating to see when you showed me actually how you connected everything back to the servers in Germany. But people were really playing with it, which is really cool. And a few questions about the whole process and how it's grown maybe is, can you tell me how customers can leverage SAP BTP to connect with large language models?
Yeah, and now we actually can, because back then we had our own little CAB application on the BTP to connect to those. But also at TechEd last year, we had that big announcement for the Generative AI Hub as part of BTP, which is basically leveraging AI Core and the AI Launchpad. And that is how you actually do it. And we get a lot of these questions, is this something new? How does it work? Basically, just look at it as an interface. And when I talk to customers explaining that, my favorite comparison there is, just think about you, traveling the world. You want to plug in your devices. And what do you need? You need that kind of like travel power adapter that works for all the countries. And you just plug in any outlet. You don't even worry about like the voltage anymore, because now the devices can do it. And this is very similar, because what we do is we have contracts with all the big players, and there's even more LLMs to come that we can connect to through the BTP, so that you have a seamless experience and you can even try it out. You just have your Gen AI hub all set up, and you have the launchpad, and you can do prompts. And while you test that, you can connect to those different models. And some of them, the open source ones, are actually even on our very own SAP hardware. For the rest, we have contracts that you're not sending the data to, like, the ChatGPT that you would just choose at home, and you don't even know what OpenAI or Microsoft, what they're actually doing with your data. Here, it's all protected. So we use like an enterprise-grade a version of that, and you have access through the Generative AI Hub, and you basically can just switch it in and out like you would plug into different outlets in other countries.
Awesome. So we're the USB-C of large language models.
Right?
But okay, so that's great. Now I know how I would connect if I'm a customer using BTP, but how do customers identify a good use case for these LLMs to resolve their challenges?
And that is actually the real challenge here, because what we see is all the customers coming to us, we want to do something with Gen AI. And we from the App House usually have the human-centered approach to innovation, meaning we want to go back to their challenges in business to really see what is the right solution for them. Because, typically customers coming to SAP, they have an idea, I want to use this and that. But we go back to the end users to really identify the real problem. And what we did for Gen AI, when this all came up, we developed a workshop format that we do, which is our Generative AI workshop, where we have an explore workshop, a discover workshop now. You will find that on our webpage, which is apphouse.sap.com. App House, the German spelling, HAUS for the house. And it's all free. And what we do with customers is we go in, we do these workshops to figure out what are their real business needs. And then we also help them understanding AI, understanding how SAP, through the BTP, how you can actually leverage that to find what is a good use case to tackle with AI. And then on top of that, to make it a really good business use case is we look at the value. Because what we realized, customers, we all know ChatGPT you can use for free, but if you want to have a little more, you have the subscription. And there's cost involved because there's a lot of computing power behind that. So we are looking for use cases where our customers have a big business value, which completely, whatever cost might come with the AI side, is just so big that the value is very obvious there. And that is something where we have shown an innovation award already this year with several customer use cases. So we can help customers, or whoever's out there can just go there and download that material to identify those real use cases. Or you could ask ChatGPT, you get like a bunch of use cases too. But the question then is, are they really, changing the way you do the business and giving you a clear competitive advantage? Maybe not.
Yeah, and I heard somebody talk about a new role, a chief question officer, or a questioning department. People there asking the intelligent questions that tie back to the value of their company, because just asking ChatGPT a question might not get you an answer that's going to provide value. But if I can go back real quick to dissect a little bit of your answer, you mentioned App House a few times, and I think it's the umlaut, the two dots. I don't know if you spell house with the two little dots over the U, but when we're spelling App House and we're talking about, is it one location? Is it still global? Is there more than one location? And you mentioned the website. Anybody that's a potential customer or an existing customer of SAP can request App House services?
Yes, and you can also use our toolkit that we provide on our webpage. We have 3 SAP-run App House locations. I'm in the App House in Palo Alto, California. We have one in Berlin and one in Heidelberg in Germany. And we are running basically a franchise. We have a big App House partner network where we have 20 partners around the globe that can also help our customers with the way we work. Basically, they have a physical App House location where we do innovation workshops, have our customers coming, but also following our methodology. And the great thing is everything that we put out there on our webpage, App House, now I even say it in the German way, and we don't put the dots. So for the URL, you're fine, apphaus.sap.com to find all that material online for free. And look for the GenAI content. It's really awesome to figure out your very own business use cases.
Awesome. So we'll make sure to add some of those links to the bottom of the description of this podcast episode. So thank you for that. And you're reminding me of, I'm a certified design thinker. I went through some of these classes years ago at SAP to become a design thinker instructor, and using things like the tactics of, there's one thing of the 5 questions of why. Like, as you keep asking why, keep digging, and why do you really need that, and where does the value come from? So a lot of cool things that people, we get them out of their comfort zone. Maybe when you get them into a room to focus on the topic, instead of thinking about their day job and what they're working on, think about the point of their day job. So anyway, I enjoy that. I enjoy getting to know people and digging deeper. Speaking of getting to know the people, as you mentioned, the human aspect of this, could you share maybe an example of a customer project that involves the use of implementing an LLM?
Yeah, sure. And, as you say, with design thinking, this is very old at SAP. And now in the App House, we have been doing this already for 10 years. That's why also our customers are coming back to us. So current project that I'm doing is with customers that are running SAP S/4HANA Cloud. Those are professional services companies. So what they do is they really, bill their time that they are working to their customers. It could be like, just think about, lawyers, or even professional services for like SAP partner companies, whatever consulting you have there. So the big thing that they do is timesheet. So at the end of the week, at the end of the month, whenever they run their billing side, because everything that the consultants do is being billed to the customer, it has to be accurate, it has to be entered. So now I don't know about you, Josh, or anybody out there who has to enter the time. Usually people procrastinate and they just don't do it right away. So that leads to the fact that at the end, it's really hard to go through the calendar, and you spend a lot of time that is not billable to customers to enter that. So that is what we only figured out when we did like end user research, because, people sometimes come to us and want to have this and that. And then we go and dig deeper and do that user research, and we figure out, no, the problem is something completely different. So here we found that actually LLM, generative AI, can help. So how? So basically, we figured, okay, there are some issues with the timesheet app itself. So you probably could have a better app that is, more user-friendly, easier to do. But at the end, we figured out the real problem here is that people, they kind of like don't have the time to go to that app and enter anything. So what they do instead is they have their own little notepad. They send emails to themselves. They put stuff in the calendar. They note it down to just remind them when it's time to enter it, or when they spare the time to go to the system and do it, what they want to enter, because otherwise you forget. So what we then are building right now is something, just coming up with the idea, what if wherever you note it down, it actually takes it already to the system? So just imagine, you just write down, I talked to Josh for 15 minutes today, book that time for me. You just write down, Josh, 15 minutes on doing this podcast right now. What if, all of those notes are, going to the system? And what can help with that? Large language models, because, it's all unstructured text. It's all something that can be easily summarized. And, we just tell the LLM what you need to look for. It needs to be today. If today it's put in. So it would actually, when I write that into my little tracker we call it task tracker, it would actually call the SAP S/4HANA system and book that time for me in the timesheet as a draft. So we are not saving that. So the user would still go, but everything's pre-filled by the time it's actually time to do your timesheet. And the idea for that, how to do it, came from that session that you helped us with at the ASAC Tech Connect in New Orleans, because what we did there, we didn't even have the GenAI Hub, but what we did is we queried the system and we built get OData calls. Here, what we actually doing, we put everything into the LLM that the user gives, and we tell there's a system prompt that we do for the LLM, telling it, you're an expert on this and that. We provide the API, which is just an OData for the S/4HANA cloud system, and we give examples, and the LLM learns how to use it, which is just like our grounding for the prompt. So what it then can do is it actually builds the payload for that post call just by all my notes that I put, and calls the API and books the time in a draft mode. So just by putting down a note on what I was working on, I have it already as a draft in the timesheet, and the user would just, whenever they have the time, finding all their work and putting it in, need to kind of like save it, and it's all there. It can be built to the customer. And to come to the business value, the big business value here is actually that those companies, they lose money for all the time that their people are basically spending on non-billable items. So that is like a very big thing. That's we did like a prioritization. We did a big use case explore workshop where we had several use cases, and that came up for all those customers that we did this as the highest priority, and they're all looking forward to that. And we hope we have a customer showing that actually already at Sapphire this year.
Ooh, nice sneak preview. So, and I like that when the code is still involving a human factor a little bit, because when we're pushing code from, a test environment to production, it can be scary, especially if you automate it. You need some kind of release. You need somebody that's a human to say, okay, I'm willing to get out of the process because it will speed up and it will amplify how quickly we can get our code out there. But you have to have some kind of intermediary effect. I like the fact that even though you're just making a note, you're still saying someone's going to look at the timesheet later. They're going to make sure and kind of debug it and make sure it's cool before it goes to their supervisor, because they don't want to be then having to constantly be going back through and teach the LLM, well, you can't enter this much time if you go past a certain threshold. So I'm sure you're putting rails on it and saying this is how you can actually implement a correct timesheet. So really brilliant, cool stuff. I think we're running out of time. I apologize. So maybe we'll have to have you back on to do another episode as we advance this and connect to more production systems and more S4 use cases. So really, really cool stuff.
Yeah, and then we can probably also talk about the aspect of gaining the trust with the user for generative AI, and how SAP is actually doing all of this for business AI with a very high ethics standards.
Yeah, sounds awesome. Great topic for another conversation. I can't thank you enough, Frank, and I thank you all for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you, Josh, for having me. Bye.
You're welcome. Bye.